Empowerment webinar. This one is particularly timely and special. I'm not going to brag about my co-presenter because I'm going to do that a little later, but our subject is communicating during a crisis. I have a few opening comments I want to make. First of all, starting at sundown tonight, the Jewish holiday of Passover begins. So I want to wish a happy Passover to all our Jewish friends, and might notice that we didn't start until sundown, so we're not violating anything there. Second, I want to take a point of privilege. Over the last few weeks, and I bet, Lionel, you think of the same way, I want to express our thanks to all the unsung heroes who are working in the grocery stores and the pharmacies and are delivering the necessities of life to us. You don't see them on TV. They probably should be paid a lot more than they're being paid. I got to tell you, right now they're heroic. And Lionel, if I sound really happy, the Eskin household has eggs. We haven't seen an egg in a while. So we're, by the way, I make them for breakfast. Andrea has them for dinner. I don't want to brag, but I think my omelet's better. Okay, and finally, to our attendees, our nonprofit partners who comprise our learning community, simply put, you're our kind of people because you serve nonprofits for one reason. You enjoy improving the lot of others. And through a variety of different roles and your noble missions, you are committed to make this a better world. So I want to thank you for your service. I want to applaud you for your service. But as you are well aware, we now need you more than ever, more than ever. And I have a favor to ask of all the attendees and our nonprofit partners. Tomorrow morning, I want you to wake up and I want you to say these words. We're nonprofit strong. We're nonprofit strong. But wait a minute. Anybody who knows me knows that Jim Eskin is the most impatient person in the world. Andrea, would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I can't wait. And I'm going to ask all our attendees if they can do me a little favor. Can you type in the room you have in your chat space? I want you to type in, we're nonprofit strong. And I want you to put an exclamation point after strong. Type that in. We're nonprofit strong. We're going to get through this. We are going to get through this because we are nonprofit strong. Lionel, what are we?
We are nonprofit.
Lionel, what are we?
Nonprofit strong.
Okay. Okay. John Argent, I want to take a second. These webinars are way above my pay scale, and all the technical, a lot of things are, by the way, but a lot of the technical and logistical issues are, to put it mildly, are challenging. And they're happening because we are partnering with John Largent, who's CEO of Game Day Media, and Lionel and I have probably in the last 2 hours have placed about 1,000 requests on him. But John, I want to thank you for the way you have partnered us and made these webinars possible. Thank you, John. And I want to call on John to share a few housekeeping notes about today's show. Okay, John?
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate it, Jim. A couple of housekeeping notes. There may be a bit of a lag as we have a lot of people on the webinar, so please be patient with the technology. It is it's beyond our ability to train that or change that, so please be patient with that. Also, we're going to have some questions that you can ask during the latter part of the presentation. And also, if you want to ask any questions, please do so in the chat box that most of you have already participated in by typing in nonprofit strong. Back to you, Jim.
Hey, John. And by the way, we're kind of old school. And I don't trust myself or Lionel, I'm sorry, Lionel, to advance the slides. So John's going to do that. So you might hear me say the word next or play video. So John, I'm going to say the word next. As John's doing that, I want to help introduce my co-presenter. And John, how are we doing on the slides?
You're not able to see the slides?
Okay. Lionel, can you see the slides?
Yeah. Mhm.
Hmm?
I sure can.
And I can't, John, but Andrea, can you bring over your computer? We got a plan B. Okay. John, I'm getting some comments that people are having trouble seeing the slides.
Okay.
John, as John's working on that, I can take a moment to introduce my co-presenter. On June 20th, I now see slides. Next slide, please. On June 20th, John likes to test our agility and stuff. On June 20th, 2018, I held my first Eskin fundraising training workshop ever at the Microsoft store at the Shops at La Cantera. And by the way, Microsoft since then has been a fantastic partner. And I appreciate the way they have worked with me in the nonprofit community. You do one of these, it's kind of like election day. Sometimes you really don't know how it's going to turn out. I mean, I didn't know if 3 people were going to turn out. Well, we had a lot more than 3 people. And I looked in the front row, and there's Lionel and Kathy Souza. And I was thrilled. And I was intimidated. You got to be, I have been admiring Lionel and reading about him and following him and admiring him for so long. There he's in the front row, and he wants to learn something from me. I am so happy to say one of the real gifts of the last 2 years is that we've been able to develop a friendship and a collegial working relationship. And I'm proud to say that, I admired him from afar. And Lionel, now that I've gotten close up, I admire you even more. I could spend a lot of time telling you about Lionel's background. I don't have that time. You can go to Google and you can see his list of amazing accomplishments. He has advised 3 presidents of the United States. He's advised Fortune 500 companies, and he has this list of accomplishments that goes on and on. But his most important role right now, he's one of us. He is a nonprofit leader, and he's going to introduce you. He's the founder and CEO of Yes Our Kids Can, which has taken on the audacious mission of disrupting the cycle of generational poverty in America. But I want to start, before I bring Lionel in, we're actually connected in 2 very personal ways. His brother, Robert Souza, who unfortunately passed away in the early part of 2018, probably is responsible as anyone I know for guiding me into this fundraising profession, and I'll forever be grateful. Robert ran a advertising firm. I was in corporate public relations, and we worked together in the 80s. I think Lionel, he went off to Mexico, went to the hills, he went into hiding. And when he came back, Dr. Lou Agnesi recruited him, which was one of the smarter things he did, to start up their foundation and government grants area, in which Robert went on to raise $80 million for scholarships. He also mentored many people, and one was me. And, I had my employer leaving San Antonio in 1996, and Robert came to me and said, Jim, I made the transition from communications and PR to fundraising. You can too. And he kind of guided me in job searches. And I feel so, so grateful to him. I want to talk about one other way. And I believe it or not, we are going to bring Lionel into this. But in the year 2004, Robert Souza came over to our house with a box. It had a mother cat named Daisy and 4 kittens. And he emptied the box in our guest room and gave us a great deal. Take one of them, you can take 5 of them. Well, we saw this frisky, tiny, kind of brown and silver cat that we named Charlie, and we adored that cat. We adored that cat. So a couple of years later, we're at a black tie banquet, and you know, one more award is given to Lionel Souza, and he goes up to accept it, and Andrea kind of elbows me and goes, you know, that's Charlie's uncle. So I feel like I'm really, really connected to Robert and to Lionel. But let me first start. Lionel, you have a huge family. How are all the Souzas doing?
We are all hunkered down, all communicating every day by FaceTime, by text, and every other way, telephone calls. But everybody's fine, and everybody's all 8 kids and 25 grandkids and 28 great grandkids are all doing great.
Wow. And do you have eggs?
We do have eggs, and they'll be out there, and kids will be coming in and out of our garden, and we'll be watching them pick the eggs from our window.
Lionel, before we, and by the way, Lionel, we're nonprofit strong.
Absolutely, nonprofit strong.
And before we jump into the mechanics of crisis communication, you know, you have believed in, you've lived it, and you have even written about the American dream. And it's a great book. I think you published it in 1998. And by the way, Lionel was gracious enough to write the foreword to my book. And I wanted to give you an update. I had a pretty good month, and I sold 27 copies last month. And according to my quick math, I'm just 300,000 copies behind you. But I was wondering if you could take a moment or two and just share what you think is in the American DNA that empowers every generation to take a hit, be thrown down the ground, but they pick themselves up, they rally together, and they meet the challenge.
Well, Jim, first of all, thank you for having me in your seminar here today. I'm very proud, and I am very glad to join you and the other folks who are on this webinar. I do want to introduce this fellow in back of me. His name is Paco the Backpack, and he is part of Yes, Our Kids Can family. And he is one of the little mentors to the kids that we have, one of the many characters and one of the main, but I don't want you wondering what this guy is doing here in back of me. Yeah, I think the American psyche is one that is very different from that of any place else in the world, because we were found, the way we were founded, it was on freedom. We are our own people. We are self-sufficient. We can solve any problem, no matter how big the problem is. So self-sufficiency, freedom, problem solving is at the core of who we are. You know, I think it's just in the human DNA to survive, no matter what happens. And I don't mean to make Americans any more special than anybody else, although we do live in the greatest country on earth, that we do have that extra self-sufficiency, work ethic, that ability to solve any problem that's just a little bit different from the psyche of other countries. So we're going to get through this. This is a tough time. It's a tough time for every nonprofit. It's a tough time for every family. It's an even tougher time for poor families. The
Yes.
poorer a family is, the tougher they're having it. And many of you out there, of course, are serving this population in San Antonio that needs the help the most. But we'll get through it, and this is going to be something that will be remembered for the rest of our lives. Any of us that are living here, whether we're 6 years old or 80 years old or 100 years old, for as long as we live,
Yeah.
we will remember this time.
Well said. Lionel's going to open up. By the way, we're going to vary the format. Traditionally, I would take maybe 15 or 20 minutes. Andrew would say I would take too long, and then I'd bring the guest in. And we decided we're going to make this a lot more conversational, interactive, and Lionel and I are going to pick on each other as we move through here. I got a lot of questions I'm going to ask Lionel. And then, by the way, we're going to make sure there's time around 4:45 or so to take some questions from the audience. But Lionel, before, you're going to show some wonderful videos that are examples of how Yes Our Kids Can communicate during this crisis. But for the attendees that might not be that familiar with Yes Our Kids Can, could you tell us a little about that, and then we'll go through and then say some comments in front of the videos.
Yes, thank you, Jim. Yes, Our Kids Can is a very unique platform. We deliver messages to kids every single day in the classroom and 3 times a week to the parents. These messages are messages that are positive. They are success building messages. Our mission is to disrupt generational poverty by creating a success mindset in all families, no matter their financial situation, no matter how poor they are, and no matter how long they've been in poverty. When somebody has been living in poverty for 2 or more generations, a poverty mindset sets in that says, well, I was born poor, I am poor, I'll probably die poor, and that's just the way it is. And when you have that kind of mindset, you tend to have very low expectations of yourself, self-confidence suffers. You believe that you will probably never go to college, that you will never have a high-paying career, and that you will never be able to send your kids to college. So we want to change that mindset, and we're changing it through positive messages to children and to teachers and to parents. And they come in the form of songs, videos, games, puzzles, and I'd like to show you a few of them, but before I do that, I do want to make this one comment here, that at the moment, as Jim said at the very beginning, I am one of you. I am trying to figure this thing out, just like all of you are trying to figure this thing out. But at the moment, our most important mission is to maintain our presence and our value to our community. Maintain our presence and our value to our community. When we do that and we communicate it well to our funders, to the people that we serve, and we do it often in an exciting, entertaining way, that's the way that I think that we can get through this. So I would like to show you a few things that Yes Our Kids Can has done, because what we do is that we sell this program to the school districts. The school superintendent then asks their principals to use the program. The principals then ask their teachers to use the program. And when they do, and when they accept it, they take this into the classroom and use it for about 10 minutes a day, 5 days a week. But we do give the teachers the flexibility to use it any way that they want. But here is what we did about a day before the shutdown came, and the CDC issued the basic fundamentals of keeping safe. So the first one we called Do the Five, and these are the 5 things you need to do in order to stay safe. And we said,
And by the way, attendees, John, we're going to run 3 consecutive videos that I think you're really going to enjoy. And altogether, it's going to be close to 5 minutes. So John, are we ready? And here we are.
To help stop coronavirus, we can do the 5, do the 5, do the 5, 5, do the 5 things to help stop coronavirus. We can do the 5, do the 5, do the 5. Pay attention to your hands because you need to wash them often. And with your 2 elbows, you can pick one to cough. And we need to keep in mind that we cannot touch our and 6 feet apart from one another keeps us safe. And there's no need to panic. We can follow these rules. We can practice good hygiene with sanitizing tools. Who knew that staying home and staying calm was super fun? When we all work together, we can hit a home run. We can do the 5 things to help stop coronavirus. We can do the 5, do the 5, do the 5, 5, do the 5 to help stop coronavirus. We can do the 5, do the 5, do the 5, 5. 1, wash your hands. 2, cough into your elbow. 3, don't touch your face. 4, stay 6 feet apart. 5, feeling sick, stay home. You're not going out. Let's sing it again, but this time sing it out loud. 1, wash your hands. 2, cough into your elbow. 3, don't touch your face. 4, stay 6 feet apart. 5, feeling sick, stay home. You're not going out. Let's sing it again, but this time sing it out loud. We can do the 5 things to help stop coronavirus. We can do the 5, do the 5, do the 5, 5, do the 5 things to help stop coronavirus. We can do the 5, do the 5, do the 5, 5, do the 5 things to help stop coronavirus. We can do the 5, do the 5, do the 5, 5, do the 5 things to help stop coronavirus. We can do the 5, do the 5, do the 5, 5. It doesn't matter what it is, there's not a problem too big. I can handle it. I can handle it. It doesn't matter what the problem is. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the greatest problem-solving show on earth, where we train our brains to handle anything, anytime, anywhere, step by step. Are you ready to learn how, kids? Let's go! One thing at a time. Take one thing at a time. Any problem, big problem, I can handle it just fine. Like doing all my homework and going to bed on time. I can tackle any problem. I can handle it just fine. I can breathe in, I can breathe out. I can learn to let it go. I can find a place in my head, a quiet place I can go. And by taking one step at a time, I can train my beautiful mind. So when things get bad, I think about good. I can do this every time. I can handle it. I can handle it. It doesn't matter what it is. There's not a problem too big. I can handle it. I can handle it. It doesn't matter what the problem is. Alrighty, kids, it's DJ Rowdy Rappin' Rant with Yes, Our Kids Can, where we learn how to be stress-free when you sing along with me. I stay cool, calm, and collect. Okay, I stay cool, calm, and collect. Okay, I stay cool, calm, and collect. Let's go. No, you can't stress me. No, I stay stress-free. I stay cool, calm, and collect. Okay, I stay cool, calm, and collect. Okay, I stay cool, calm, and collect. Let's go. No, you can't stress me. No, I stay stress-free. I will stay calm. I will stay cool. I can handle stress at home and at school. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter where I am. I can be stress-free when I count to 10. Take a deep breath and control myself. Talk to my teacher if I need some help. We can have handle stress, just wait and you'll see. Cool, calm, and collectively. I stay cool, calm, and collect. Okay, I stay cool, calm, and collect. Okay, I stay cool, calm, and collect. Let's go. No, you can't stress me. No, I stay stress free. I stay cool, calm, and collect. Okay, I stay cool, calm, and collect. Okay, I stay cool, calm, and collect. Let's go. No, you can't stress me. No, I stay stress free.
Lionel, can you tell your creative and production team for us, bravo?
I sure will. I think they do an amazing job. They've all been working. When this happened, they
Hey, John Largent, so let's start moving forward with the slides, okay? I'm sorry, Lionel.
Yeah, we got everybody stepped up to it, and they were
Okay, John. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
wonderful about doing everything that they needed to do. The songwriter and the musicians got together. They came up with this song overnight.
John, can you back up one slide? Stop there. Okay, I'm sorry, Lionel. We're going to be, this is like, I don't know, the early space program.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, and so John, however, we're going to do it at a fast pace. What I'm going to do is present what I think are some of the basic building blocks of fundraising, especially adapted to this crisis. And as there are communication connections, I'm going to bring Lionel into the conversation. First of all, if you can type, I'm going to change this. When nonprofits do well, we all do well. We're going to have a new slide next week, and I want you to type in, we're nonprofit strong. We're nonprofit strong. Next slide, please. That's plugging me, and guess what? It is a dream of mine to serve the nonprofit community. We'll move to the next slide. One of the things I noticed in 25 years of working with university presidents and chancellors and foundation board members, they were completely fearless in their lives, with one exception, asking for a gift. And I think really when you get down to it, most fear is fear of the unknown. And we as practitioners didn't do a good enough job of demystifying what I call the art and science of fundraising. John, next slide. So we began, as I said, in June of 2018, doing workshops at Microsoft. Lionel and Kathy were there in the front row. Next slide, please. And by the way, as Lionel said, we know a lot, we don't know it all, but I like to think of our workshops and our webinars as learning communities where between all of us, guess what? We can answer any question. Next slide, please. This is the schedule, and we're adding programs as we're talking, but you should, like next week, is anybody interested in securing, type in yes if your answer is yes, securing government and foundation relief grants? If you are, type in yes. John Largent, you see any yeses?
Yes, there are many yeses coming.
Okay, well, it's my pleasure to have Dr. Arlene Siller, who founded about the same time she got in consulting, Ascend Nonprofit and Business Solutions, and I don't know anybody who knows more about grants than that. Oh, so next slide, please, John. Let's learn about you. And John, we're gonna really pick up the pace here. Next slide, please. Can you type in one of these? How would you describe your nonprofit affiliation? A, B, C, or D? Type that in. We're gonna pick up the pace here.
Yep, we're seeing a mix of all letters. Pretty
Okay, great. Let's go to the next slide, John. And how much face-to-face solicitation experience do you have? And you see A, B, C, or D. I'm in D, by the way. I've lost count. I don't know if that's a reflection, Lionel, on how many solicitations I've made or about my memory. Let's go to the next slide. Thank you. And pick an answer here, the largest gift you obtained. A, B, C, or D. What are we seeing, John?
We're seeing a lot in the C category, and yeah, mostly C.
Good. We're going to teach you how to take C to D. Okay. Marv Leroy, who's a presenter on April 22nd, he's raised, I forget now, gazillions of dollars. Okay. Let's go to the next slide, please. I like to break the art and science of fundraising. John, be ready. We're going to move quick. Into 4 distinct phases. The first phase of who are we going to ask for money. The second phase is how do we forge a personal and emotional bond between the prospect and our mission of our organization. The third one is obvious. That's the ask, when, where, and how. And stewardship closes the loop because we thank and acknowledge donors, because if Lionel gives me 10,000 rubles this year, I'm going to go back to him next year and ask him for 20,000 rubles. But by the way, right now, and we'll talk more about this, and nonprofits are wondering what they should be doing. You should continue with discovery of your donors. You should, by all means, and we're going to talk about specifically the communication challenges, you should be cultivating them. We'll talk more about solicitation and stewardship, and you absolutely should be thanking them for their support, okay? Next slide, please. And this is to say, you know, I work with people and they were afraid of making the ask. And one of the things I try to emphasize that the ask represents only one moment in the gift continuum. And really 90% of the work happens before Lionel or Jim or someone asks for the gift. And if you do that 90% well, actually asking is one of the easier things that you will do. If you don't do it well, I don't care how good the solicitor is. John, next slide. And it really boils down to this, folks. It's not complicated. I wish I could tell you it was more complicated because you'll need me more. But it comes down to quickly telling your story and looking the donor prospect in the eyes. And you say, we need your help. Would you consider making a gift of a specific amount for a specific purpose? That's very important. We live in a society that's price tag driven, and philanthropy is no different. And then what you do is you zip it. And what sometimes might seem like the longest 10 seconds on the planet, you wait for a response. Next slide, please. Social distance is not idea distancing. And I want to bring in Lionel. What's your recommendations on how nonprofits, particularly if they're not coming together in one space, can brainstorm their respective staff team and maybe their board members?
Well, you know, we're just what we're doing right now. Zoom stock has zoomed through the roof, and because, you know, everybody's using it now, and it's becoming second nature. It's becoming nicer than a phone call or a text or something like that. When some important meeting has to happen and people need to share our ideas, this social distancing is not, as you say, it's not idea distancing. I think people can work just as well via Zoom and do it socially, do it for business and every other way. Most of us are doing it already. We've already done several happy hours with friends over wine at 6 o'clock and so forth. And it's just a good, we're as connected as we can possibly be.
Sounds great. Next slide, please, John. And we're saying we don't have an American to waste. And I don't care what you do well in your nonprofit, you're needed. Now is the time to step up. We need everyone to play their role at all levels of the organization. John, next slide. And we're sort of reminded, remember the movie Groundhog Day? We're sort of in Groundhog Day. You know, it's Bill Murray's hitting that alarm, waking him up, and every day is the same. But I think that's another reason why the nonprofits are needed so much to do what you do best. And that is to fuel hope and expand opportunity and to serve society. Next slide, please. Andrea has a good friend named Norma Remick, and we were discussing with this issue yesterday, and she pointed out nothing lasts forever. So let's keep that in mind. You know, our parents and grandparents faced 2 world wars. They faced a depression. They did so many challenges and wonderful things. This is not going to last forever. Next slide, John. I want to say this is a point of bias. I talked about Charlie, but I think we're cat people. I think Lionel's dog people. I think John Largen's dog people. I started as a dog person, but now I think, you know, I've always felt that our pets do much more for us than we do for them. And these are the 2 pets that we had fostered through Helotes Humane Society. The white cat is named Joey. We call her a diva. And the brown cat's name Billy. By the way, Billy was a friend of Charlie's, your nephew. Let's move on, please. Philanthropy is, I wanted to show you this because philanthropy has been amazingly resilient. We've had recessions, stock market swings, and philanthropy generally keeps on going up and meets a challenge. Last year it hit 428 billion. Next slide, please. And I want to bring Lionel into this. You know, everybody is a donor. I don't care if you give $100, $1,000, or $1 million. You are all donors and special to us. And there's something in the American DNA. Lionel, would you like to build on that?
Well, you know, that is of helping one another. You know, this is a thing that says if you have something to give, give it. I think we see people coming to help each other in so many ways. We see it across the media, all kinds of generosity that's happening. We experience it in our own families, people coming at our doorstep. Right before the meeting here, well, a good friend of mine that sews came in and actually was to give Kathy and I these masks that she is making with Dia de los Muertos type of coverings and so forth. And they just dropped in, walked in the door and handed me 2 and then 2 masks and then left. And I see this kind of thing happening all the time. You're seeing it all the time. Presents at your porch almost every day. Some family member, some friend bringing you something. That's just the way that we are. We care about others as much as we care about ourselves. And that's something very special about this country.
Right, right. And John, too, we're going to pick up the pace. So let's go to the next slide. And by the way, I just wanted, you know, I love corporate and foundation money, but notice here that gifts from individuals comprise 68% of that 428 billion in private philanthropy. And by the way, this data has been tracked by Giving USA for 60 years, and that share is basically held constant between the high 60s and about 70%. Next slide, please. Here's another thing too. We're seeing more and more of the mega donors making huge, huge gifts in the millions, the multi-millions, and even the billions. And we're seeing now that 12% of the donors comprise 88% of the gift income. I'm going to predict that our big philanthropic leaders that are already organizing are really going to step up. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, folks. I'm going to pick up the pace a little here. Okay, here's our advice to you. Number 1, I'm sorry, I sound like a combination of your mother and the CDC, but you cannot help your family. You cannot serve your nonprofit and all their stakeholders unless you take care of yourself. Lionel, I'm going to keep to the 5, okay? Next slide, please. And right now, I want to bring Lionel in. You know, I think a big challenge that we're facing in communication is that there's a lot more we don't know than we do know. And how do you advise our nonprofit partners to think about their messages when there's so much uncertainty and there's more they don't know than what they do know?
Well, first of all, I would say, Jim, it would be brevity. When you send a message out, whether it is to a donor, whether it's to your board of directors, whatever it is, take the time to write it well. Take the time to edit it well. You might want to write it one night, then sleep on it overnight, look at it again in the morning, and see how many words you can remove and still have the message read in an exciting way. The more clear you are, the more entertaining you are, and the graphic look is also very, very important. You can send an email, but if you put graphic elements to it and you give it some color, we put yellow backgrounds on a lot of our messages that we send out, and I make them, and I take hours to actually do write the intro and then rewrite it, put it away for an hour or 2 or 3, then look at it again and edit again, and then ask other people what they think of it before I sent it. And because time is precious for everybody, you send a long, long email, and you know, they have to be very, very, very interesting.
Okay, Lionel, I'm going to butt in here, but you know, over my, I don't want to say how long, 40-year career, you know, I started as the low man on the totem pole, who really did a lot of the sweating as a copywriter. And then I worked my way up to like the guy that supervised the copywriters and worked up to vice president. And I got to tell you, I have a bias because I've played all those different roles. I think that initial man or woman who does that first draft does about 80% of the work in about 20% of the time. And then it goes up and up to the vice president, the president, you know, the chairman of the board, and they maybe change 20%, you know, but they take 80% of the time. What are your suggestions for expediting the approval of messages in a nonprofit?
Well, I think somebody needs to be in charge of it, and the fewer people that are involved in it, the better. Take your most talented writer, your best communicator, and put that person in charge of the messages, and don't let it go through a whole heap of people before you send it out, because sometimes timeliness is as important as clarity and a good, strong message.
Very good. Okay, John, next slide. And we also, next slide, we're going to pick up the pace here. I want to mention that I think we're lucky as frontline fundraisers that we can effectively fundraise from home. In fact, I got to tell you, I was responsible for a couple teams, and we often said to our development officers, what the heck are you doing in the office? You know, get out there, and money follows time. We like the face-to-face interaction, and you can do a lot of that from home. Next slide, please. But we have to do it now virtually, you know, and I think as Lionel said, Zoom stock has gone up. I want to make 2 suggestions. If you have some older donors, I would be one of them, that perhaps haven't gotten on the Zoom, I think this is a great time that you can improve your personal relationship and their relationship with their family members by being their coach to get on to Zoom. I want to talk about the other, you know, we're talking about everything's drive-by. I think development officers can do drive-by touches. I have a colleague, she makes the best chocolate chip cookies on the planet. And I don't care if the donor gave $100 or several million, they're so excited to get her cookies. You know what she's doing? She's dropping it at the doorstep of the donor, okay? And then she goes over to the window and they see each other in the window and they wave at each other. I got to tell you, that stuff counts. You give them a virtual. You would like to hug them, but I learned from Lionel's 5, I can't hug them. So we'll give them a drive-by hug. Next slide. Because, you know, let's talk about, I don't know about you, I've never spoken to my family members as much. During this situation, what do? You call your family members, you ask how they're doing, and then you tell them how you're doing. I think you should do that with your donors. And of course, to the extent possible, is there any way we can help? Next slide, please. The 4 R's, I got to bring you in. And then, by the way, we're going to go to questions for the audience, okay? The 4 Rs, let's go to the next slide. First one is speed. And Lionel, you talked about that. What's the old saying? You know, you send it out today, it's history tomorrow. You know, so we're in a particularly now, everything is live time. Lionel, you want to comment on social media?
Well, I think that everybody is understanding social media more and more, whether we use Facebook or Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, LinkedIn, Pinterest, or whatever we use. Each of us kind of understands our target audience. Of course, Facebook is by far the broadest one that has the biggest reach. Closely behind that is Twitter and then Instagram. So those three are the big three. And I think most people really respond to that. But I would not shy away from the old means of communications, email, and especially if it's very personalized email, where you can use MailChimp to personalize it and send the same message to many, many people, but it seems to be personalized to each one because each one is addressed directly to their names and so forth.
Great. John, next slide. This is a great time for senior staff and the board to consider their mission, because I think as far as making your case during this crisis, how are you relevant to the demands of COVID-19? How are you responsive? And to take your example, Lionel, how is the SR Kids Can responding to COVID-19?
Well, we're in a way, we're going to have to reinvent ourselves because we sell our product to the school districts. Now, we don't know when the school districts are going to be revving up again, or whether they'll be ready to go in September or not. They probably will not be. If they do, they'll have to have a way of testing the students and testing them often. They don't know how they're going to do that. Parents are not going to be all that comfortable about sending their children. They're going to school. So they have many challenges. Property taxes will probably not be paid. There will be less money coming in. The state doesn't have the money they had. There may or not, and may not be less money there. It's already been appropriated, so maybe that state money will stay in, but it's still based on attendance. Schools get paid by attendance, so if kids aren't going to school, they're not going to get the money that they're used to getting. So that means that they're going to have to do a lot more with less. Does that mean they're going to have room for Yes, Our Kids Can? Well, we are making sure that they know that they need us, because we are kind of like their motivational co-parent.
Right.
Their social and emotional partner, making the kids feel comfortable. We can help them increase attendance. We can help them even catch up quicker to this year's summer slide combined with a COVID slide. These kids are going to be out of school for 20, 24, 26 weeks. And the poorer the child is, the less able a parent is to teach that child at home. So there's going to be a tremendous slide of learning, and it is going to be a gigantic challenge for all the educators a year from now.
Right. Hey, John, can we go to the next slide? I would say, too, this is the time. Every organization will define its major donors at a different level. In some organization, it might be $10 million. In another organization, it might be $10,000. But whatever your organization is, this is the time to give a personal touch. And that could be either a Zoom or a phone call from your CEO or your board chair to your major donor. Again, define however you did that, and say something to this effect: we could not imagine approaching a moment like this without coming to you for your input, your direction, and your continued philanthropic leadership. And I would ask for a specific amount based on that donor's history, engagement, and capacity. Next slide, please. I want you to see what you remembered. I told you something at the very beginning about nonprofits. Could you type that in? Could you type that in? I think it was, we're nonprofit strong. We're nonprofit strong. Next slide. And I'll tell you what, Lionel, John, we're going to call some audibles here at the line. And if it's okay, we're now around 4:50. John, maybe you can share a question or two, and then I want you to move to the last section. I will skip those closing videos, and I want you to go, I think it's about the last 5 slides. But John, are you ready with a question or two?
I do have a question here. What is the best approach during these times when companies are struggling to ask for a give? And that comes from Nikki.
I think I know that, Nikki. She's in the hotel business. Okay, Lionel, you want to take a crack at that? I also want to say something.
Well, I think that right now the foundations in particularly are thinking about really stepping up. There's many foundations that have already doubled their giving this year, and they've challenged other foundations to do the same. I think foundations, instead of shrinking away, are going to be more generous than they have been before. And although there's a lot of people asking individuals and foundations and the government for money, there seems to be a lot of generosity still.
Right. You know, and Lionel, you know what we're seeing, and I'm very encouraged by, the foundations, the corporations, and the individual philanthropists are telling the nonprofits, with prior grants, you now have complete flexibility to spend it where it's most needed. I think we're going to see, and let me tell you, as someone who's run a small organization, and I was taught from the beginning that an unrestricted dollar is worth maybe 2 or 3 restricted dollars. John, do you have another question? And then we're going to go move towards the close here.
There was one other question that was very similar to that vein. So I think that's it. Questions.
Okay, and let me, however, Lionel and John, can you jump to the, I don't know, I'll tell you when to stop, maybe close to the last 5 slides. But Lionel, I want to ask you, in particular, a lot of our audience is composed of nonprofits that fit into the smaller or mid-size revenue, and they really have limited resources, limited budget dollars, limited staff. What's your advice for that? By the way, and they comprise the great majority of the 1.5 million nonprofits in the US, the 100,000 nonprofits in Texas, and the 6,000 in San Antonio. What is your communications advice to those small nonprofits in putting together their messages?
I think it is, find what it is that you do that's better and different from what anybody else does. Be distinctive and have a clear, short mission statement. The mission statement, in my opinion, should always be 1 sentence. The longer you make the mission statement, the harder it is for people to remember it. And it has to be a mission statement that's doing some grand work, but you have to be clear about how you're going to reach that mission statement and what you're doing and how effective it is.
You know, I'm thinking, John, could you advance on some of the slides? You know, I'm thinking you said about keeping the mission statement. Go back to the most important person in the world. When Ed Whitaker was recruited to run General Motors, and I remember I read his book, you know, they had a mission statement, I think was about 4 pages. And he said, I got an idea, let's change it. And he tightened it to, we make great cars. Does that meet your?
We will make and sell the best cars in the world, the greatest cars in the world, because he did have that thing that says we will make and sell.
Don't tell me you advised them on that.
No. I don't advise anybody on anything. But
okay, we're going to wrap up here in a few minutes. I want to say in closing, one of the greatest poets of our time was Maya Angelou. And she said something I think is so relevant to our work with donors and donor prospects. And Maya said, people will not remember what you said. They won't even remember what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And it is our job to make our donors and donor prospects, especially now, feel like they are the most important people in the world. Next slide, please. Just a few housekeeping notes. If you haven't, I want everybody to be in our database, because not only will you receive our monthly newsletter, but you will get invitations to all these workshops and webinars. But by the way, and during the COVID-19 crisis, Eskin Fundraising Training has committed to not charge for any of its programs, workshops, and webinars. Next slide, please. I mentioned Lionel and I are both authors. His book has sold more than 300,000 copies than mine, but I'm gaining on him. I had a good month, 27. And I hope that you'll consider, Lionel wrote the foreword. Folks, it's 80 pages. It's a quick read, and it's really made for your board members and volunteers. I didn't think they'd like a 500-page book. We'll subject the development professionals to that type of torture. Next slide, please. And I wanted to close and leave you with a money-back guarantee. And it applies before COVID-19, during COVID-19, and it will apply after COVID-19. My guarantee to you is that your chances of getting the gift will go way up when you ask. The only bad ask is the ask that's never made. Next slide, please. I wanted to close. I grew up in Boston, and President Kennedy was one of my hero. Oh my God, it was more than hero. I mean, you should saw my little tiny bedroom. Andrea saw it actually still, and it was covered with JFK posters and plates and coins. He said this, and it sounds like he was reading into the future. President Kennedy said this at American University's commencement on June 10th, 1963. And he said, in the final analysis, our most basic common link is that we all inhabit this small planet. We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's future, and we are all mortal. Lionel, I'm thinking President Kennedy is speaking to us right now. That quote has never had such profound meaning. Next slide, please. So, one of the things I like to do is run trains, start them on time and end them on time. And I want to express, first of all, to our producer, John Largent, CEO of Game Day Media. John, it is a privilege to partner with you, and this doesn't happen without you. Thank you, John. And finally, to my the man who I admired from afar, and now I can admire up close. Lionel, one of the treats for me over the last 2 years is for Andrea and I to get to know you and Kathy. And as I said, I admired you, you know, when we were just talking about Charlie and you didn't know about Charlie. And now I've gotten closer, and I got to tell you, I admire you even more. And thank you for sharing all your wisdom and expertise today.
Well, thank you so much, Jim, for the job that you do and for helping so many people. I'm always glad to partner with you. And Andrea, you guys do an amazing job. So
and the cats help too. Don't overrule them. And let me finally say that we are going to send, there's my contact information. Andrew will tell you, I'm kind of a freak on being quickly responding. I believe that the small business person could be nimble. But here's a couple of things that are going to happen. We're going to post this. We've already have a message ready. It summarizes this. That's right. I want to say something. Will you all, before we sign off, one more time, I want to know what you're going to wake up. And also, I want you to share that with the other members of your nonprofit, particularly the CEO, and saying, we're nonprofit strong. We're nonprofit strong. I want you to type that in. We're nonprofit strong. And I want you to share that with your co-staff members your volunteers, your board members, and your donors. The nonprofit sector is going to play a huge role in helping America, and we will overcome this crisis. And I wanted to tell you, we are going to send you a link of the recording that includes the slides, and that will probably be sent in the morning. I think I'll have my cat Billy do that. And then we're going to post, first of all, we're going to make it an immediate post on LinkedIn and Facebook, and that will summarize this discussion. And then we're going to post the link tomorrow on Facebook and LinkedIn so everyone can learn what you did today. And again, I want to thank our nonprofit partners for comprising our learning community. We're here to serve you. And maybe, by the way, Lionel, let's do a little fist bump, virtual fist bump. Yeah, we did that. And we're here. The nonprofit community is united. We're going to learn from each other. We're going to get through this together, and we're going to emerge stronger. So thank you for being part of our learning community today. We're going to reconvene next Wednesday at 4 o'clock, and Dr. Arlene Siller is going to join us and talk about government and foundation relief grants. So Lionel, enjoy your virtual happy hour. I'm going to have some eggs. Okay, thank you everyone, and we'll see you next week.